All right, let's jump right in. Today we're going to dig into one of the most personal and, honestly, powerful letters in the New Testament, Paul's letter to the Philippians. It's this profound message about joy and unity, but it's written from a place you would absolutely least expect. And that quote really gets to the heart of it. You've got this incredible paradox that makes this letter so stunning. The author, the Apostle Paul, is writing this from a Roman jail. I mean, think about that. It's a complete reversal of what you'd expect. The person in chains is the one who's offering a message of freedom and joy, and that's what makes this letter so potent.
So, how did Paul tackle this? Here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with the high-stakes context of that jail cell. Then we'll look at his core command, this call for unity under pressure, the difficult path of humility he lays out, and finally, the ultimate model for it all.
Okay, first things first. Let's set the scene. Paul is locked up, imprisoned by the Roman Empire. And he's writing to a church that's getting squeezed from all sides. They're facing opposition from the culture around them, and at the same time, they're dealing with some friction on the inside.
So this is the core challenge, right? When the pressure is on from the outside and things are tense on the inside, how do you keep from falling apart? It's the fundamental question Paul is trying to answer, and, it's a question that feels just as urgent for us today.
So what's Paul's solution? Well, it's not just some vague encouragement to hang in there. He gives a very specific, almost politically charged command, one that his audience would have understood immediately.
The real key is in this one specific Greek word Paul uses for conduct, politeumai. Now, this wasn't just any old word. It was a deeply political term. For the folks in Philippi who were super proud to be Roman citizens living in a Roman colony, this word would have hit them right where they lived. Paul is basically playing on that pride, but he's flipping it. He's reminding them that their ultimate allegiance, their primary citizenship, isn't to Rome, it's to heaven.
And this is just a crucial point. Heavenly citizenship isn't some abstract idea you just think about. No, it has real-world demands. It requires a distinct lifestyle, a way of living that clearly shows the world who you really belong to.
Okay, so what does this heavenly conduct actually look like in practice? Paul's very first instruction is a call for something absolutely essential for survival when you're under pressure: radical unity. And he's so practical, he breaks it down into 3 clear active commands. He's not calling for everyone to be clones of each other, not at all. He's calling for a deep unity of purpose, of mindset, and of action. They're supposed to be a community with a shared focus, fighting for their faith together. And you gotta love how Dr. Darko puts this. This one accord isn't about everyone piling into a Honda. No, it's about the entire community sharing a mission, sharing a conviction, and sharing an aspiration. And it's all energized by the same spirit.
Okay, that sounds great, right? But how on earth do you achieve that kind of deep, resilient unity, especially when things are tough? Well, Paul is crystal clear. He points out the attitudes that will always destroy it, and the one crucial virtue that actually builds it.
And the contrast here is just so stark. You just can't have unity when people are driven by selfish ambition or pride, or only looking out for number one. Paul says the only path to real community is through genuine humility, this idea of counting others as more significant than yourself.
But this humility isn't just about being meek. It's a deep, active empathy for other people. And to really illustrate this, Dr. Darko shares this profoundly moving story from his own life where he learned this exact lesson.
He was studying abroad, and he couldn't go home for his own father's funeral. He describes this moment of just overwhelming grief that completely broke down his tough exterior. And it was through that immense personal loss that God taught him this tenderheartedness, this empathy that's required to truly connect with other people's pain. It's a vital ingredient for a healthy community.
So this call to unity through this deep, self-giving humility, that is an incredibly high bar. Where does Paul even get this radical idea from? Well, he points them, and he points us, to the ultimate example.
See, he doesn't just tell them to try harder or to invent this mindset out of thin air. He says this is the very mind of Christ himself, a way of thinking and living that is already available to them in Christ. It's not something they have to create, it's something they get to step into. And then Paul quotes what a lot of scholars think is an early Christian hymn. It traces this incredible journey of Christ. It shows him moving from divine glory to voluntarily emptying himself in human humility all the way to death on a cross, and then finally being raised up to the place of highest honor by God. This is the pattern.
So let's just trace Paul's incredible logic one more time. It all starts with our conduct, how we live as heavenly citizens. And what's the key evidence of that citizenship? Unity. Okay, but how is that unity even possible? Only through humility. And the ultimate perfect model for that kind of self-giving humility? Well, that's Christ himself.
And so this ancient letter, written from a jail cell, leaves us with a timeless challenge. In a world that pretty much champions selfish ambition, what does it look like for us to choose the way of Christ-like humility for the good of others? Thanks for joining this explainer.